phone call or somebody will call me if
Hi,
it
my
gets
name is
annoying.
Roy Canterbury. I'm your host today on Archery Talk 101. We have Brad on the line with us today, and we're going to talk archery and see what's going on with him and his world and archery and everything else. Welcome, Brad.
Welcome, glad to be here.
Tell us a little something about yourself and maybe get into how you get started in archery.
Well, I like the outdoors a lot. I've always enjoyed stalk hunting. And some people say you don't do that much in archery, but I did pretty good in it for a little while. Uh, Trying to think back on it. And I always enjoy getting kids outside. So early, probably my 30s and 40s, I started working with the kids. Well, I did 4-H. And before that, I was working with Boy Scouts doing their archery shoots and the rifle shoots, getting them trained up, getting them their merit badges and stuff on that side. And it was always fun working with the kids and getting them through that and understanding what they needed to do to accomplish and be proficient in their shooting. And as I got older, I started seeing that youth in it where it can be trainable, can learn the stance, learn how to hold the bow right, learn when to let go of the bow, stuff of that effect. When I had working with the Army Warrior program and coaching with the archers there, it was completely different. A lot of them had bad stance, bad techniques, but they were hitting the target. They were getting their groupings real tight. So what do? You try to change it? Do you talk to them about changing it? Yes, you do. But you got the idea that you got to fall back on. Well, if they've been doing it this long and they're accomplishing it, maybe the change will help them get a little bit more proficient. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Because a lot of them
Yes.
can't get it out of their head that they have been doing it wrong and still getting great groupings. So that's just a lot that you can do as a coach. You can't lock everything in as we could say 101 or 100 archery 100 or archery 101 or archery 201. There's too many variables there per person.
Right.
We know where to start. We know about our stance. We know how the body to be lined up, how to hold the bows, the right that. But each person still is different, so that makes a lot of difference. So, like I said, I got with all that and working with the kids. I enjoyed the hunts, going out, being out on nature. So it was just something else to do without having a rifle with me or a shotgun. I would be able to hunt a little bit more or be in the woods more with a bow. And then if I didn't, during the all seasons, you have your 3D shoots, your fetish target shoots, anything from there that you could through to do. So it always kept you challenged on that.
Yeah, there's pretty much you can do something with archery pretty much probably about 12 months of the year. You've got something you can do with your bow, and whether it's hunting, and then you get early spring, you've got indoor shoots, you got outdoor shoots, you got your all kinds of different things to shoot, and where do you want to go with it is it's up to you. And
I mean, I've done the hunts, the deer hunts, the other hunts with it, and it's different. You get on a boat and you start shooting for trash fish and bringing them in to be processed somewhere or another for either food, cat food, anything like that, fertilizer, however they want to process it through. But you're thinning out the carpet and gar and helping some of the lakes stable out some. But the shooting is different on that part. You're not necessarily
yeah,
shooting through a sight, you're shooting by reflex. And that
yeah,
really gets you working on that to shoot by reflex on what's down the arrow instead of down a sight or anything a lot of the times. And then you're not shooting directly at what you're shooting at. You're having to shoot either above or below, depending on how the depth of the water or how their angle is too. So there's so many different concepts that go on there.
yeah, there is. That's something that people don't realize, that when they're down in the water, they're not where they look like they are. And I actually had one time somebody said something about that, you know, the angle that you're shooting at the fish. And so I actually took a clear glass of water and I created a little video. It's on my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is Learn to Fix It Yourself. Out there, I couldn't tell you where it's at right now because it's out there somewhere under the archery stuff. But I put a rod in there. I think it was just a steel for sharpening knives. I just stuck it in there and looked at the camera to the side. You can see it went down and it just shifted over. As soon as it hit the water, it just shifted over. Looking at the side, and that's like, okay, I look like it's here, but it's actually way lower.
It is.
And
That's normally how it is.
yeah, and then it all depends on, are you shooting straight down, you shooting at an angle? That all changes, and it's like you get a lot of things to take into account when you're shooting a fish that's not on the surface. Of course,
It
around
does.
here, most of the lakes you can't see down more than about a few inches anyway. So if they're not on the surface, you ain't seeing them anyway, because there's a lot of them are so dirty. But if you get on a clear water lake, where it's fairly clear and you can see down a ways, then you got to start worrying about where is it really at, because it's not where it looks like it is. Can't shoot for it. You got to shoot, like way below it.
It does make a lot of difference on that.
Yeah.
I enjoy the youth when they get up and try to shoot. And to me, it's one of the sports where it doesn't matter if you're male or female, the competition is the same for both. I see the
Right.
only difference in that between the two might be the poundage of a bow that they're pulling, the weight that they're pulling back and having. But once they do the breakdown, unless it's a traditional bow, they're pretty much equal. But once they start shooting, they're back to equal. Once they get used to whatever poundage they're pulling, they can be very much equal to each other.
Right. It's just the guys normally pull more weight. Once you get a little bit older, and I think,
Yes.
and the really young kids, I think the girls end up being pulling more weight than some of the guys, but then it kind of shifts after, you get so old and the guys start developing a little bit more, and then you get a lot of your target archers only shooting like 40 pounds.
Yes.
They're not shooting high weight anyway. And if you're shooting 40 pounds or 30 pounds, it doesn't matter. The arrow's going to do the same thing over and over. And, generally, I've found the faster the bow, the more it magnifies your mistakes.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You got a lot more. I mean, it's less forgiving with the more poundage you pull.
Yeah.
So that's just a light twitch can change so much on that. I
Oh,
have,
yeah.
even with a smaller, lighter poundage, and the shooters on here will probably know, you can have 3 arrows or 5 arrows, and we number them. I assume y'all mentioned that before.
Right.
Put a little
Yeah.
number on each one of them, and you start recording where that number is hitting on your target. You might say, well, it's all over. Well, if that might be you. But if you notice it's high to the right every time that you shoot that, and the other 4 in the grouping, there might be something just a little wrong with that shaft. It could be a little off on the flexion or a little off on the tip, just something. It's a little different. So I always put that. That becomes, if I'm doing a competition shoot, that becomes my throwaway arrow,
Right.
or so that now if I have to use something I'm expecting to hit the dirt, or just want to have something just to shoot for something else odd, I'll pull that arrow out because I don't want to use one of my good ones that's been online and hitting my target where it's supposed to hit. And it's the same when you go out for a hunt. You practice, even though you're putting a broadhead on after most of the time you shoot, because you don't want to ruin your target with a broadhead or dull up your arrows. So, but it's still paying attention to what the flight is and how it goes on those parts.
Yeah, I know on mine, I shoot the Muzzy 3 blade, so I have dull blades that I just put in so I can shoot them. And then I don't know if they even have them anymore, but on tuning the broadheads, I got 3-bladed broadhead and 3 fletching. I use feathers. Um, Old school. I've never switched to vanes. I just like feathers. I like the way they work. I don't want to change. I'm too old to change. but I'll align them and I can actually tune that broadhead to get it to group together. Because what you do is there's a little U-shaped washer I put on there, and then I put a washer on there. There's a little bitty like O-ring washer I put on there, and you tighten them down, and you can adjust them a little bit. With the old hot melt glue, once you could melt them up on the aluminum arrows, you could melt them and tweak them until you got them where you want them. Well, with the carbon arrows, they're basically glued in, non-movable. And
Yes.
so where they go in, they go in. So the only way to do it is you'd have to put your broadhead in there as you're setting it in and then get them lined up and hopefully it's where it's at. And this way you can adjust them. So I get all my arrows shooting the same. And I hunt with the Comp Pro arrows, the 1000 straightness arrows. That's what I hunt with. Um, the difference between it, I've gone over, you know, just what you talked about earlier. I have a whole podcast I did just on getting your arrows set up and figuring out what's bad ones and what's good ones, and then I set my broadheads up so I can hit the X ring with my broadheads, and then that's what I hunt with. And if I can't get them to do that, well, I put a field tip on it and I shoot it with one of my field tips. And I have a bow I hunt with that's set up to shoot broadheads. Field tips do not shoot the same out of it. They never will, and I don't care because I have another bow I shoot field tips out of. So they just don't hit in the same spot. And I'm not going to try and make them do it because you got wings up front, you got wings in the back, your arrow's slightly longer. Those that pay attention the front of center, now you have a longer tip on there. That 100 grains is spread out over, an inch and a half or whatever it is, as opposed to like a little half edge. So, all that changes. Now, I don't get too worried about that because you're only shooting 20 yards. I don't
Yes.
shoot more than about 20, 30 at the most. Um, well, I don't see as well as I used to. So my pins are a little more blurry and my target's a little more blurry. So I just don't really take the longer shots anymore. That's too hard to see out that far. So, um, there's a whole thing I covered this one time on, what is your effective distance? And that because you have to know, okay, if I know exactly it's 20 yards, and how tight a group can I make my arrows? Am I grouping in a 4-inch group at 20 yards? Well, then where is my group at 15 yards? Where is it at 25 yards? So you might have a 10-inch target area that you can keep arrows in just because you don't know if it's 15 to 25 yards because it all changes. So, the effective range for most archers is only 10 to 15 yards because they
That's
start getting
true.
out there. They can't group tight enough because they haven't learned from somebody that's taught them how to get those tight groups. You've got to start shooting the correct way, like you talked about earlier. Is there's a correct way to shoot, and then there's another way to shoot. When I teach a specific way and I tell you why I'm teaching it this way. And then, okay, this is how you do it. Now we're going to modify it to fit you because this is what works perfectly for me. And, if I'm teaching you, Brad, I'm going to teach you what I do. And then we're going to modify it because it may or may not work, say, for you, because your body's different from mine.
Yes.
And
Well,
you have different muscle structure, different bone structure. You have different limitations. As we get older, our limitations change. So what I used to be able to do at 30, I can't do now at 69. So it all changes, and that's
it
where
does.
we coach multiple people. And I did many years of martial arts. I did almost 20 years of martial arts. So I incorporate that. I did a Korean art called Hapkido. And there's a lot of techniques that I take out of what I learned in martial arts, convert them into archery. And then I teach a little bit differently than some. I teach a completely closed stance. I don't teach an open stance because of uh, conservation of force in one direction. If you put it in multiple directions, you can't be consistent. So I teach that way. But if you have your death grip on your bow and you lock that arm in, you're going to hit it because you got to have that proper grip through your hand,
Yes.
through the not the meaty part on the side, but right through there. And those that have had martial arts training, I always say, if you have any martial arts training, and if they say no, then it's like, okay, I got to go the hard way at it. Those that have had it, I say, okay, heel palm strike. And everybody's had martial arts that know what a heel palm strike is, know exactly what I'm talking about, because this is connected, not on the meaty part. This is as you point your hand up, it's the part that if you push straight on there, it pushes right through all your bone structure. And that's what you strike with. And you can get a lot of force with not a lot of heart on, on your hands. And, a punch, you have to worry about your wrist twisting and all that. We punch on that part of it, you don't worry about it. And that's what you're pushing the bow with. And when I teach, I'm going to teach that when you're done shooting, that index finger should point to your target. If it's not pointing to your target, you're pulling off somehow. You're pulling off at an angle, and now you're sending that bow at a little bit of an angle. And, he's talking about the variation of faster bows. Take a nice loose grip, and then make a little bit tighter grip, and a little bit tighter grip. Next thing, you have death grip. That bow is going to shoot a different spot every time. So that's why I teach. Don't hang on to it at all.
Yeah, I used a faster bow when I stalk hunt. I tried to find one that had a small between axle length. It means it's less forgiving, but I try to make sure I get a good brace in it so that I can have a little bit more forgiveness between the arrow once I shot. But I needed something because a lot of times I'm stalking and the deer may move quick through the woods, and I may only have a plate size spot for the time that it's in the 20, 25-yard distance to be able to shoot. When I'm shooting from a stand or something, and we know we got a whole lot of different opening areas, I didn't mind having another. I had two bows or three bows. I would use a slower pull bow with a little bit lower poundage, and I have more time to decide my shots and work it out from there. It's just things I work with. It's funny. I got a left-handed bow and a right-handed bow.
Oh, yeah.
Shoot either one. So, and it was kind of interesting on that. When I started out, I was left-handed, but as I went, I started learning to shoot right-handed also. So it's just one of those things some of us can do, some can't. But it's good training. And another thing I would say, if you're just working, doing a weekend out there or on a Saturday evening or a Friday evening as a youth, and you're not worried about trying to get that grouping, all those old bad arrows you got, if they're aluminum with a light bent to them, but they still hit the target, but they may be off, still aim at the same spot. But what I'm talking about is just building up your arm strength. That way, You're not worried about doing anything else but just pulling an arrow back, shooting, pulling an arrow back, shooting. You're aiming, you're working your stance, you're still working your release, but don't worry about that grouping. Just let your muscles build up during that time period, especially if you're first starting out. It's a whole lot easier to do. You don't worry about having to buy $50 worth of arrows every week because you done lost some, busted some, tore them up, all that different type of stuff. So there's some thought there.
Yeah, when you have an arrow that you know is not going to hit your spot, you're not worrying about where it hits because you know it's not going to hit where you're aiming. So quit worrying about where it goes. The back stuff's just so that you don't have to go hunt for it. And now then work on your technique. Try and notice what's going on. A lot of times I'll teach, I'll put you up close enough to the veil where you can basically reach up and grab your arrow and pull it out just by leaning forward, and then shoot with your eyes closed. Because with your eyes closed, which is, now as we've done this multiple times, I can do it with my eyes open and not really worried about what's going on. I can just focus on what my body's doing because I've done it for so long. But starting out, when I was first learning back tension release, that's what they did. They had to go up and shoot their eyes closed. And it was amazing, it's like, oh, that's what it feels like. Oh, good. Open your eyes, get on with the crap. It's like, now you couldn't do it anymore. Close your eyes, and eventually you can get where you can open your eyes. And there's no target. In fact, it's best if you take your sight off so you have no pins to even look at. So
to be able to do the reflex shooting is so remarkable if you can start out with it and go from there. And you see it more on the traditional bows than you do with the compounds. But even with compounds, if they can start doing it without that sight and still be able to know where I got to tilt it to this and just feel it just off of instinct, saying, this is what I need for a 30-yard shot. This is what I need for a 20-yard shot. This is what I need for a 3-yard shot. And that 3-yard shot gets more people in trouble than
Oh
anything,
yeah.
because they're always off. So, especially if they try to use a sight. And I told my shooters, if it's 3 yards, I tried to tell them not to take it. Don't lose the points. And they still want to try to take it because it's right there. I can get that. I said, no, unless you've done it before and you've done it in practice and hadn't been able to do it, don't make an attempt. Take that 0 over minus and all. So just some of the different shoots we do.
Knowing what your bow does at different distances is a big thing. And to shoot some of those, shoot 5 feet from your target, 10 feet, 15 feet, 20 feet away from your target. And I know I was at a 3D shoot, it was on a platform. And there was this gator about 5 feet in front of the platform. Now we're on a platform that's up probably 10 feet. So you're almost shooting straight down, if not even a little bit more, at least a 45-degree angle shooting down. And I knew on my boat at that time, I had a program. I still have it someplace. I don't know if it would work on your computers, but it would do a whole sight tape for you. You adjusted, you took the speed of the arrow, you knew the weight of the arrow, knew the speed of it. You knew the distance between the arrows and your sight, and the distance between your sight and your eyes. Measured all that stuff in there, and it said to add a 5-foot target, I need to shoot it as if it was 70 yards. This is 5 feet. I'm shooting at 70 yards.
Yes.
So I come back and I draw back and I get to my anchor point. Now I'm bending at the waist, because it's not dropping the arm, because that's not right. I'm bending to it, and I'm depending on the rail to hold me from falling over. And I finally get down where that 70-yard pin is on that target. And now that I go follow through with my shoot and my shot, and I nailed it because I knew what my bow did at 5 feet.
Yes.
And then of course, then after I shot, it's like, okay, I almost had to have somebody help me stand back up because I was leaning over so far, to get to that shot. I probably wouldn't take that a shot out of a tree stand, but I have taken some where I've had to depend on my safety belt to hold me into the tree stand. But when I set up my safety belt, I set it up so that I can sit on my stand. I can sit down on where the seat is, and I can feel a little tug pulling up on it. And then as I stand up, generally it's kind of a little bit of a tug pulling down. So if I stepped off the side of the stand, I couldn't fall much below where my seat is. So I could always get back up. Now, if my tree stand fell, I have pegs where I could get to my pegs, because I always put pegs where I climb up above my tree stand and step from a peg down to my tree stand. So I still have both hands and one foot on a peg as I'm putting weight on the tree stand. So my pegs are there where I could get to them fairly easy. And I've used that. It's like, okay, I got to lean out here and okay, get the end, get a little, because I put my hand on the safety valve behind me and then pull. It's okay, because I don't just kind of lean over and all of a sudden it's there. Kind of lean out and use. I've used my safety belt as kind of help me get to a shot that I couldn't get to otherwise. And that's something that you need to know your equipment and how it's going to shoot, and that's something you got to practice. And I don't know of hardly anybody that practices those short range shots.
No, most of them don't, because they think, oh, that's too easy. I'll get it. And then when it's time for it to happen, most of the time you undershoot.
Yeah, you're going to shoot way low.
How did I do that? Why did I miss it? Because I told you what, but especially youth, they want to try it. Of course, I would have to. I did it once too, tried it, and I realized, oh, I should have calculated it this way or this way. And so I learned the best way of trying to do that is almost like you're shooting for bow fishing. For me, it's off the instinct and down there, and I did pretty well doing it that way.
Well, and then I've had some that never shot using the arrow as a reference. Always use the sight. Says, well, I just sight down my arrow. You ever done that before? No. Well, then how do you know it's going to do you any good? You know, because now
Yes.
you got to bring the bow clear up here. Now you're in a completely different position. You're not in your normal position. Now you're in a completely different, your arm's raised up. Now this arm is different angle. You've gotten pressure pushing on the front shoulder. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you've never done it, practice.
Yeah, it's got to
You
be
know, that
practiced.
I think that's kind of the theme right now is to practice those short range shots. Get up there real close and see what your bow does. Because each bow is gonna be different. And that's the thing too, is you got to remember your form is straight. If you have to shoot up or downhill, the only way you can do it is bend at the waist. You just got to remember that nothing changes from your waist up. It's just twisting at the waist or bending at the waist. And then try and figure out the angles. Figuring out your distance is always a problem. And I talk about this all the time. It's like carpenters know how to make a right angle. It's a 3, 4, 5 triangle. So you have one side is 3, the other side is 4, and the connect the two ends together is 5. That gives you your right angle. And people don't understand. Lots of times, gravity only works straight down. Gravity don't work at an angle. It's always straight down. So how far does your arrow travel horizontally? It doesn't care how much vertical it travels. It could be dropping down 100 feet. But if you're only 60 feet away from where that trail is, it could be dropping 100 feet. That distance is still only 60 feet, 20 yards. No matter what that angle says it is. That's why a lot of the new rangefinders now have that angle compensation in it, because they go straight and it says, oh, it's 20 yards. Bending it down, it still says 20 yards. But then you look at the other number, it says, oh, this is actually 60 yards straight line, but it's set up to show you what you shoot it for. A lot of them are set, the ones designed for shooting, bows and compensating for that. Those rangefinders have that in there. And the way I range something is I'll look at the trail and I'll find a tree and I'll follow it up so it's horizontal, and I'll judge the distance to the tree up in my eye level. And then I had one, I've told this story a couple of times, but the trail was 20 yards away, because that's what I ranged that tree that was on that trail, 20 yards. Well, a deer come walking down that trail. That deer, if I'd have looked by size, I'd have said it's 50 yards all day long. It was that small. That's 50 yards. I drew back. I shot it for 20 yards. Guess what? It was 20 yards. I got the deer because I didn't shoot it well. Because I knew that was a 20-yard shot to that trail. And that's something you got to do up in advance. And I've even I had a 30-foot rope with me, and I had a loop on one end, and I pegs on my tree. I'd hook the loop on there, go out. Okay, well, there's 10 yards. Take it off, measure another 10 yards into a field where you know how to judge yardage in fields when you first start out. So I measured and I put a little flag in there. Identifies, okay, that is 10 yards, that's 20 yards, that's 30 yards. So I knew by those flags where it was at. And I kind of rearranged them, prearranged them. So I knew, and now as you get a little bit more experience, you can kind of judge those distances. But when I
I
first
would
started
take
out,
it, my stand on the tree with my rangefinder and then back away from the tree and range the tree where I'm at.
right?
And I would sometimes different leaves or move some leaves or a little twig, sheet, piece of toilet paper, something
Yeah,
white, something completely different. And then I would lay it down. And I might even put a leaf over the top of, at an angle on it, just where I can necessarily see that odd piece of white that maybe another hunter, I'm not worried about. Most time a deer think curiosity, but
right.
another hunter comes in there and they start seeing pieces of paper or a piece of ribbon hanging in a tree. They're going to know somebody's hunting here. Maybe wonder why they're hunting here. What's drawing their attention to this? That is, if you don't leave your stand in the woods anyway. But then I just, marking it somewhere or another that only you know the marks for your 10, 15, 20, 25, or maybe the max is 30 if you're going to do it. So you know each one of those things, and it's just lazing back to the tree from where you're at and all. And then get up in the tree and you already know the distance is there. It's there no matter what that deer, what you think you're supposed to be, that's it.
Yeah. Well, and it wasn't until a few years ago, I think probably 3 years ago, when I got a rangefinder. I never had a rangefinder before. I always just stepped it off. And, I stepped it off, when I was in college, I took a backpacking orientation one, and they said, what you got to do is this is a known yardage. You're going to step it off until you know how many steps is this distance. So it's like, okay, you need to go out 50 yards out that way and then turn. Well, I can step it off. I know how many steps it is to do it. And when you're doing that, you count every other step. So, I always start with my left foot. So every time my right foot hits the ground, I count one. And I know at 11 and a half steps, that's 20 yards. So then if I go another 11 and a half steps, that's 40 yards. So you can figure out, how many steps is in it. Because if you had to count every one, it's like, okay, well, so the, you're going to have 23. What's the chance of keeping up with your steps? I'd forget,
Yes.
okay, where am I at? I forgot. But if I'm counting every other one, I don't have so many numbers I got to keep saying, and then you can just kind of figure them out and walk your distance. So, I've walked it enough that I can pretty much walk it off, and I'm close enough that it doesn't really matter. If you can keep a nice tight group, then if you're off by 5 feet, okay, say I got a 1 inch group. If I'm off by 5 feet, well, maybe I got a 2 inch group. So I'm still within, good shot at most hunting ranges because, like I said earlier, I don't see as good as I did, so I don't shoot those longer ranges anymore, and I just keep them a little bit shorter. So, and now when I put up tree stand, I arrange to where different spots, so I know how far it is already, and I don't have to range them. I know this is a 20-yard shot or this is a 30-yard shot or whatever it is, and then I don't have to think. I just know. I just got to remember to pick the right pin.
Now, some funny stuff here. And the youth and anybody can, the youth will start to understand this as the more they get into it, because it's gonna happen some way or another. You have your bow, you have your quiver with you or your arrows, however it's mounted to the bow, on your side, on your back, whatever, however you carry them in. You get to your stand, you tie off the bow to your rope or whatever you're going to pull it up with. You either have the quiver mounted to the bow or coming up. You get up the stand, you get everything up, you start pulling up the bow. First thing does when a quiver hangs in a limb or a vine.
Yeah.
Or, as I've done it once, I got everything up, I'm sitting up, everything's good and quiet, just starting to break day. And I say, well, I reach for my release. And I can't find my release. I know it's there. I'm not. So now I'm sitting in there on the tree, trying to decide: did I leave it in the pack that I moved over there and hid under the stump? No, I didn't do that. I remember taking it out. You're going like, well, where is it? And you look over the side, and there it is at the bottom of the tree. You hear it moving up on the hill. Oh man! I tied off a piece of smaller line to one of my broadheads. I just eased it down, watching it, and I finally got it to catch on the tip of the broadhead on the upper side of it enough that I could pull it up. And I'm up there the whole time as I'm pulling up. Please don't bump the tree and fall off. Please don't bump the tree and fall off. And I got it all the way up. And I says, do I grab that? I says, my luck, if I grab the arrow, it's going to fall off. So I just held the string high above enough and just leaned the arrow back over on my lap. Then I reached for the release before, because I figured if I reach for it out there, I'm going to bump it before or bump there, and it's going to fall back down. I got it up to the tree stand. Yes, it happened. And got to watch a few deer out of range. Sometimes it makes you wonder if they're there, if they know you're there. Some of them do,
Yeah.
some don't care.
Yeah.
You never know.
So and when it's warmer, I have a handheld release that actually snaps to the loop on my bow, so it hangs on there. I've dropped it, but I have my wrist strap that I carry as a backup. When it gets really cold, that's what I use. And then I have another handheld that I have. It's not near the quality of my Carter. Um, but it's another backup. So I always have 2 extra releases in my backpack. So because I have dropped my release before I got it hooked, I somehow I just dropped it. It's like, well, okay, just grab the wrist strap and okay, I use that. You know, because I wasn't gonna climb down and get it because that was like way too much work. And a handheld one, you're not gonna hook it with an arrow.
Yeah.
There's
No, it was
nothing to hook it to. And
yeah, it
a
was a,
magnet wouldn't even work because I'm not sure if there's enough metal on it to catch anything. Maybe the jaws, but I didn't have a
that
magnet
could
with me
be.
anyway. So
Yeah, I was telling it was a risk, loop one. That was the only way. If it had been one of the older ones that was just a straight release, nah, I would have had to went down.
yeah,
I'm just going like, no, man. I've had other people like you, like that, just realize it or get it up there and get to it, and then drop it or have it on the seat and they move over to do something, not paying attention and knock it off. Things happen.
yeah.
Just enjoy it and keep working on with it. You'll figure something out, and you might have to climb back down to get it, and get back up. Don't worry about it.
Well, and
Uh,
and then you got to decide: do I want to just leave my bow up here, climb down, get up real quick, or take my bow down in case something happens? I can be on the ground with it. But are you going to be ready? So I think I'd probably at that time I'm just going to climb down, climb back up, get my tree stand, and go.
yeah, it's like mid morning, toward afternoon, whatever time you decide you're going to ease out of the woods. You tie the bow up. You get ready to lean it over the side and start to lower it back down, and you hear movement.
Yep.
Stop. Now you're trying to decide: do I pull it back up, or was that a deer, armadillo, squirrel? And you wait until you verify, and then you realize it's a deer. Now there's a problem. That wasn't but one deer. That's one already done snuck but almost up on you, and it's almost looking at you because something caught its eye, and it's looking in that direction, trying to figure out why. And your bow is swinging just a little bit. And you're going like, oh no, how did that one get that close? I heard the other one, but I never even heard that one move. And you're going like, and if it turns, you can bring it up. And usually by the time you get it about to your hand ready to grab it, it turns and looks back at you. It's always fun out there.
Yeah.
So the stories you can tell, just not having to pull back and release, just the hunt itself, the things that happen in it.
Oh yeah, there's been many stories that you have, and not all of them you actually made a shot, and some of them it's like you didn't have a chance for a shot, and other times like you just got paid attention to what's going on, and it's like you forgot about shooting.
I, like I said, I like stalk hunting. I'm in the woods doing my stalk, and it was only a buck only part of the season. And I'm in a flat in some woods in a low area, and I see this doe coming off the ridge with a pretty good brisk trot with her. And she comes with about 20 yards of me, and I'm just watching her looking back up the hill. And I hear her stop, and I'm not paying attention. I'm looking back up the hill to see if something, the way she was trotting, like something like a buck might be following her. And I hadn't drawn back yet. I says, I'm behind this bush, kind of, which wasn't too tall. I mean, I could stand up behind it to get a shot if he makes a commitment coming down. Or I could wait till he's about beside me and be on my knee and take the shot. And I look over, and the doe was standing there about 10 yards from me looking at me. Hadn't blown nothing, just looking at me. And I look back up the hill. I look back over at her. She's looking up the hill. Then she looks at me. I look back at her. She's looking at me. Okay. I look, and then I see her look back up the hill. So I'm looking back up the hill, waiting for whatever's going to come off that hill. She looks back at me. I look back over at her. She just turns around and walks off. I said, okay, now I'm back looking up the hill. A little bit, I hear something moving, coming back from where she was at. I look at, here she comes back to me, about 10 yards from me again. She's looking back up that hill, and I'm looking up the hill. And it finally dawned on me. She wasn't looking up the hill for what was behind her. She was trying to figure out what I was looking at up the hill.
Oh.
But she done looked at me, watching me look up that hill. So she's looking back up at the hill, trying to figure out what I'm looking at. So she done left or went down past the woods and noticed that I wasn't after her, wasn't caring about her, that I was watching up that hill. So she come back and looked back up that hill next to me. Took a little bit, but it was funny after I realized what she was doing.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah. Well, she wasn't a threat because you weren't trying to shoot her,
No,
and sometimes you just never know what they're going to do. And I know one time I was walking out and was hunting off some old tracks that the train tracks were gone, and I was on this lady from the farmhouse up the hill. She'd she'd walk those tracks all the time. And the deer just got used to her walking down the tracks, and they just ignore her. And I was out hunting. I hadn't seen anything, and I'm walking down this trail, and I look over to my right, and here's this doe bedded down 10 feet from the track, just looking up at me as I walked by. And I looked over at it, and I just kept walking by. It's like if I'd have stopped, it'd have been gone because it was used to people walking down the trail and it just ignored you walking down the trail.
yeah, they're real funny. I mean, I walked by others and out there feeding in the open, coming across the pond levee, see it, another doe, can't shoot it, walk on by it, and it never leaves the spot. I get within less than 20 yards of it, and I'm walking to it, and usually that spooks it there. He just reaches down, grabs another mouthful of grass, and looks up at me as I'm walking. And I take the trail veering off to the right. I look back, and he's still just standing there looking at me, chewing away on the grass. Takes another bite. And I'm like, oh, well. I just head on back out. And because it was starting to get coming in on a bad storm, and I needed to get out of there before it came in, and I just didn't want to be in there when that type of storm came in on that.
Yeah, and if you shot it, you'd have been in there in that
Oh
storm.
yeah.
You wouldn't have got
Well,
out in
it
time.
was another doe, but I couldn't deal with the storm
Yeah,
uh on shooting it during that time period. But even if I'd seen a buck there, I would have been questionable. If I shoot it, I don't make a good kill shot. I have to trail it. The storm comes in, I lose my trail. I may lose the deer. It's not worth it. It's to me.
right.
I'm just no. I've gone out and enjoyed hunts like that, and just don't take a shot. It's just how it goes. But thinking about that ahead of time, oh, it's a beautiful buck. Do I take the shot? Yeah, you might. But unless you can drop it and it only run a little distance, you may never find it. If it comes in storms and rains, you lost your
Right.
bug trail. A dog may never be able to trace it. You never know. I've lost one or two like that. Not necessarily for that, but in the evening, get a bad or I say a bad the shot comes out being bad. Good blood trail, good blood spots. Come back that morning. I think you're going to come back that morning. It pours that night or first thing
Oh,
in the morning. Like, where did it come from? So now I have no blood, no nothing to trail anymore. Never found it. So,
yeah. Yeah, we've
and it
all
don't
had
feel
had a
good.
few like that we spend hours and hours looking for them, and then you just don't find them. And others, we had one time I shot and ended up not being a really good shot. Um, so about an hour or two later, the guys hunting would come by, and I'd got down and found the blood trail and then waited for him, and we started walking a little bit, and about 30 yards down the trail, deer gets up and runs off. So we go up and look up. Sure enough, as there's a pool of blood was bedded down, and they're supposed to get like 3 or 4 inches of snow that night. So, but we couldn't chase it anymore because we'd have never found it. So we just walked out so we knew where to come in. Next night we come back and we got snow all over the ground. So there is no trails. There's no blood trail, no nothing, no footprints because it would be laying underneath the snow. So we said, I tell to them, and let's just we got to look for a lump of snow. And I did find a lump of snow that had a deer under it. And sure enough, there it was. Next night, we're down into way below freezing. Well, don't if it's not below freezing, it's not going to snow or stay. So it was probably down in the 20s that night. And I get to the deer and the legs are froze, the rest of the body's still warm. And, clean it, and there it was. Found a lump of snow, and that's where it was at. About another 30 yards, it bedded down again. It wasn't going to run very far, you know, but if we'd have tried to track it again, then there'd probably been who knows where it would have run.
Mm-hmm. And that's on the one I had lost. It got up. I heard it run, and I heard it stop. And I pulled off. Said, "Okay, I'll come back in the morning." And then it stormed that morning. And I checked the weather before because I could have went out, waited another hour, come back in with some lights, heavier lights,
Right.
some help, and maybe found it. But it was cold that night. It'll be good. It won't have no problem. No rain is scheduled. Yeah, that was a wrong move, weatherman.
Yeah.
And it wasn't but a short rain, but it was enough to wash even where the blood where they had laid down. It was gone.
Oh, yeah.
We made some circles. We did some movements out, looking, hoping, but never found anything. But that's just how it goes. Sometimes it happens that way.
Yeah. I had one. It was supposed to rain, just a light rain, and guys go hunting with. He was gonna go anyway, and I afraid, yeah, he's gonna go sit in my tree stand and shoot a deer out of my tree stand. This is all those same railroad tracks where I seen the deer earlier, bedded down. And sure enough, I'm sitting in my tree stand. Here comes this deer. So I shoot it. It runs off, and it's a light misty kind of rain. And I get down. I'm basically following footprints in the mud. And it didn't go very far, and found it and drug it out. But I had footprints to follow.
Oh, yes. I followed some before through a swamp. It did pretty good. We found it. But sometimes you just don't get lucky. And you just hope you do. You got to choose those times to know when to shoot, when not to shoot.
Right. Yeah, at that time I wasn't going to go because I really don't like going out in the rain. But I knew, sure enough, he's going to sit in my tree stand and shoot a deer on my tree stand. And sure enough, I got out there and I shot a deer out of my tree stand. So he'd have got that one if I hadn't gone. So yeah, it's one of those times like, okay, we're going to go anyway. And and it was nice because I seen which way it run, and I seen it go into um, where the old tracks was into the trees. I seen where it run into there, so I knew it went in there, so I could just follow it in there. And sure enough, it didn't go very far, and it was down. But I waited for a while before I even went after it.
Yes.
Well, and anybody that's hunted with a bow knows that you can't go after them right away, even a good hit. You gotta
No, I
wait
mean, I usually
an
start
hour.
off like I get down out of the tree. I set the bow over the side, get the stuff I want to stalk with, because you're going to have to stalk probably, even as you're
Right.
trailing. You got to take your time, and hopefully you'll see it before it sees you if it's still alive, and know to back off and let it nature take its course there.
Right.
But you go ahead and get your stand down. If you have a climbing one, you go ahead and put it up, get it ready to travel, get everything there ready. Get your bag. If you have your bag, get everything ready to go. And then you probably got about 15, 20 minutes there. So now if you want to wait to 30 minutes or a little bit longer, however time period you decide you need to wait, you've already got your time has already been, some of it's been taken by getting everything prepped to go out instead of running down the stand, getting down the stand and getting anxious to go and look for it, which you don't need to. It makes your time eat up a little bit better.
Yeah,
And
you're doing
I'll
something,
get
getting
there.
ready, and
Yeah. And I might even walk over there to where the impact was to look to see, okay, yeah, it's just a little bit of hair, a little bit more blood, good trail. Okay, I got that. And then back to the toilet paper. Doesn't hurt laying a piece of toilet paper there where the start was. That way
oh
you
yeah,
know. And things toilet paper is used for besides what it's intended. Mark that trail going out. If it's in the evening, pointer, grab you a couple of chem lights from Walmart, some of the stores. You can always crush one open and you can hang it where you started and take some of the smaller ones and you can move them down the line. I would always have just pieces of toilet paper and just put the pieces up where I can see, so I can look back and judge. Because sometimes, like you said, it's following a trail in the mud. or whatever. But if you know where a trail runs along the side of a hill or something, or how they move through a old field that's not been cut or used in a while, you can start saying, okay, he's veering to the left, and I'm coming up to a fork. Well, I'm figuring he's going to take that left side, and that's usually what's going to happen. Because if he's already been veering left on all his other movements, as you're watching the blood, and you lose a little bit, and you look back at how it's curving, maybe by seeing where all the toilet paper's hanging down for your trail to judge. Which, if it rains, it washes it away. It's biodegradable. You don't have to worry about picking it back up. You're good to go. And that can help you a lot of times in tracking a deer, and then finding a little spot of blood, and then maybe seeing it over there and saying, oh, he's down, I'm good to go. Or,
Yeah.
no, he's looking at me, let me back off. So, and on that part.
Yeah, that's kind of nice. They got the marking flags, the orange stuff, but they'll stay there for years, because they don't degrade. And nice thing like about the toilet paper, I guess hadn't really thought about it, but toilet paper, you can hang some toilet paper, and then like you said, when it rains, it's going to get wet and fall apart, and you know, it's gonna disappear. Nobody's gonna even know it was there. And if somebody does see it, it's like they're not gonna realize it. It's like, oh, why would somebody hang toilet paper in a tree? Couldn't they wipe right?
Oh, yeah. And but most hunters will start realizing, oh, they're marking a trail either in or out. That's what they usually think.
Yeah.
So,
Well, when I'd use the flagging stuff to marking trails, I would put one, and then they would just stop because I'd like put two of them or something. And I know at that point I got to turn to my trans stands down this way, so I just mark a couple little spots here and there. It wouldn't mark the whole way all the way to my tree stand. And that works pretty good. And once you're familiar with the area, you just walk in and go. But even though the area very well, I was hunting some public property, and I was taking a friend of mine in who put a stand up a little bit further down. I'd walk in, and then his was straight down, and mine had turned and go up the other direction. Well, walked in to where his stand was, and then I'm going to walk straight to my tree stand, kind of from an angle. I actually walked underneath my tree stand, didn't even know it. And now I'm up past my tree stand. It's like, okay, this area is too far past my tree stand. So then I walk down. It's like, okay, now I'm too far past tree stand the other direction. And so then I say, okay, I'm going to head straight out till we come back. And I went back the trail, wanting in, and walked in right to my tree stand. And it's like, oh, I walked underneath my tree stand. I didn't even look up and see it because I walked straight to my tree stand. And I went back and started and went right to it.
I mentioned stalk hunting a lot, which I do. Let's say I shoot the deer, hit the deer, good trail going out. But before I walk over to make that trail, where I'm standing, where I made my shot from, I will not move until I move leaves, whatever's on the ground. If it's not a ground, open ground, I'll put an X, or clean out a big area and put an X or something in the middle of it so that I know where I was standing. And then I go to where I already got pictured in my mind. I done looked at it the whole time before I did that, where I shot, and know about where the impact was before I walk over there. And if there's no blood, I try to look. I don't make a mark in the ground because I don't want to disturb where they
Right.
may be a little bit of blood or hair or something. But I try to visualize that point. Maybe just a piece of toilet paper laid down as a starting point to where I know where to go. But if you can't find it, you got a spot to go back to reference and go back. Okay, there's that tree again, and you walk back to the tree. But I was a little bit too, and I wasn't far enough. Okay, that's because you already know where you stopped before. But once you
Right.
went back where you took the shot from, you realize, I need another 5 steps. I would be there. And then you go back and make that extra move and realize, okay, because a lot of people forget, well, didn't I shoot from here or was it right there?
Yeah.
And all. because even if it's even a foot different changes up how you're looking at something. If you move left or right from where you shot, you start saying, well, I didn't shoot that spot because now there's a limb in the way or a tree in the way. It makes a lot of difference.
Yeah, and then the other thing too, you remember is as you're walking your blood trail, you're following your blood trail, don't walk on your blood trail.
That's true.
Because if you disturb it, you can't go back and find it because now you've disturbed it. So you need to always walk not on the trail. You want to walk beside the trail so you can see it. And like I said, mark your trail with, I kind of like the toilet paper idea because, a lot of us, we always have toilet paper with us because you never know when you need it and out in the field and, you need to lean up against a tree and use your toilet paper
And it doesn't help. I mean, it doesn't matter if even if you have a twig right there by the path, you put it on that twig hanging higher so that sometimes you can't see it on the ground as you lay it beside it. Don't lay it on the blood. You don't want it to do that. You want to lay it
no,
beside. But to put it up higher, that way you can see it sometimes on our waist level somewhere that as you look back, it's quicker to find. And then you move on down left or right of the trail. It's not saying that you're not going to walk on your blood trail sometime or another, but what he's talking about is literally walking on the trail. Because sometimes you'll cross it without realizing it because a deer make a turn
right.
or something. But as soon as you see the blood, step back to the left or the right of it before you, and then you look for your next spot and all. And I mean, I've gone almost 25, 30 yards thinking this is where the deer went and believing it's where the deer went. Some people say being a deer. And that's what I was talking about, where the deer wanted to veer left. And I kept going left. And the next little area, I went left. And then something told me, no, he didn't go left. He went right. And my son was with me. And he says, Dad, I'm not sure the deer is out there. And I'm turning and I'm looking back. And the whole time before I turn and look back, I'm still checking the grass. The grass now that I'm going to come out into a field. And on the back side of the grass was a blood spot.
Oh,
And he says, how in the world? I said, blood. He says, what? And then I found blood again. Blood again. He says, I don't believe it. He says, we done went 20 yards and no blood, and now you're on blood again. I said, yeah, but it doesn't look promising. And he said, why? I says, the drops are lighter. They're farther apart. I said, probably why we didn't have blood, probably one of the organs, or either it was has sealed the hole up. He says, trying to explain that to him, how it went. So, but still just tracking and found a deer eventually, but sometimes you don't.
yeah. You just got to spend the time you're looking for it. And I know there's one time we shot a deer and it run off and we're tracking and it's dark. So we can't see. We have no blood, no footprints, no nothing. And we're walking and we're walking and we're walking. It's like finally, after, you know, following it probably 7,500 yards, we said, I must not have been as good a shot as we thought. And then next we come back, well, we smelled it. 30 yards further down the way we was walking, 30 yards further, and we'd have found it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
But
walked by one, a guy had shot. I helped him look for it for 4 hours, back and forth, back and forth. We got to where we knew it was down, and we were doing grid searches, we had sectioned off little parts of that area, and we're just doing zigzag searches in it. And then he'll do the same search in the same area that you just were, because we're figuring I'm seeing something that he may not see. He may not see still nothing. I'm back in there 2 weeks later, walking by, and I just happen to look back to my left, and there's what's left of the carcass.
oh,
The coyotes already found it. And I'm like, how did we miss this? We were all over it, but we just did not. I don't know. They could have drug it out a little bit more from when they were eating on it, but it
right.
was in the vicinity that we had walked all over and still didn't ever see it. So
Yeah. Yeah. You never know. You hate that when you do that, but because you hate to kill them and then not be able to eat them. And you've got to, you got to spend the time looking. And, there is one I shot, it was like 10-yard shot, 70 pounds with my Muzzy broadheads. And I find my arrow not too far later. It had pulled out, and we're walking this Milo field, and up comes this doe, and then she runs off. We still stomped through that Milo field for another 3 hours, and that had to have been the deer. And it must have, the only thing I can figure, because um, on the shoulder blade, on that front shoulder blade, there's a spot that an arrow will not go through.
Yeah.
A Muzzy at 70 pounds at 10 yards will not penetrate it. And I must have hit that, because you could tell, and the arrow was just a little bit right on the broadhead, where it only went in about the depth of the broadhead, and it was laying down. So it didn't even really stick in the deer. And, through the normal shoulder blade, Muzzies go right through it. They don't care. Bones, they don't care. There's that one spot on that shoulder that there's nothing to go through it except the gun.
I had my very first deer I shot with a bow was that I'd been sitting over a bunch of persimmon trees off a creek. The area below was like somebody had taken a tiller with the deer sign. It's getting dark. I mean, I'm already at dusk. So I'm walking back, started back out, and got out of the tree. Now, I didn't have a stand, but I had a tree limb that I could sit on, perfect above and back off and wait. Perfect shot. Cover that whole area below the persimmon trees, 2 trees there. And one of the other trees, what was so funny, not only persimmon, it had a muscadine area. And there was still a few old muscadines there too. So I mean, this is acorns, persimmons, muscadines, just rich for the deer sign. They had it tore up. I'm starting back out. I hit the sand from the creek, and I look up and I see the deer coming off the bank on the other side, 3 of them coming right to me. And I stepped up behind a little pine tree that was about 5 foot tall, and stepped into it. And I didn't even look down the sight, just had the instinct. When she walked beside me, I let go. And she wasn't 3 foot from me. And it knocked her flat on her back. And I realized as soon as she hit the ground where the arrow hit, I'm on like, really? She jumped up, took off, the arrow came out. And somebody said, how did you know where you hit? I said, I hit that bone. I said, my arrow didn't go but 2 inches into her. I said, if it did that good, I says, she's still running. I said, you won't want to look? I says, there's no need. I said, when I saw enough of her, when she hit the ground, I thought it was a good shot. But as she stood up, I saw the broadhead come out. And I said, I knew exactly where I had hit. The
Yeah.
spot that none of us want to hit. It just,
No.
I'm gonna,
It hurts them, but it's not fatal. It'll heal up and go. And if you're gonna have a wounding hit, that's the one to have, because they heal up from it. They're a little smarter because of it, but
I mean, they had that mind that they wanted those persimmon stuff. I mean, they trotted down through there, and they didn't even, when they hit the creek, they never looked up, left, right, whatever. They were hauling butt coming to me and coming to those trees. And I hadn't been, it's been a 5 minute or 30 minutes or 30 seconds more. I would already walked 5 more feet and turned left and gone up another trail that they were coming down, and I never would have seen them.
yeah.
And it was light enough that I could see when they walked. I saw them come off the hill, the other bank, come down the bank, cross the creek, come to me, hit the sand, and I'm going like, they're going to smell me, they're going to see me something. No, walked right by me. I mean, I probably could have just took the arrow and stabbed it into her. She was that close.
Yeah.
But I've always enjoyed bow hunting. It just takes a lot out of you sometimes because it's a
Yeah.
little bit different, and there's a lot more to learn. A lot of different techniques there to have to go with.
Oh yeah. There's something to learn. You can learn something new every day the rest of your life, and still not learn it all.
No,
There's
for all the
so many
youth
different
out there.
aspects and different bows and different style of bows and different style of shooting. And um, you know, the I interviewed one of the guys that does the horseback archery, And they shoot completely different. They put the arrow on the right side of the bow for right-handed shooters instead of left side, and then they have like a thumb hook, so as they draw back, it pulls it into the bow because they're galloping while they're doing this, and they're riding a horse, and they don't have anything onto the horse, and they got two hands, and so the normal type of a recurve, you would be pulling it off. This way, it forces it into the bow, and it was kind of interesting, listening to all the stories and then watching, some videos of these guys galloping on this horse, shooting these little targets and
Well,
hitting
I'm
them.
gonna, for kids that want to get parents that want to get their kids into it or get that, you may have already mentioned it on one of your other podcasts. Two of the good bows to start with is be the Discovery or the Genesis bows. They're both little compounds. They don't necessarily have a what we call a let off, but they have enough that it doesn't matter whether you have, this is hypothetical in this part, a 24-inch pull or a 27-inch pull. The bow is good for either one of the kids. So you can have a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old use the same bow, and you don't have to make any adjustments on it because all the difference, only thing difference are going to be with them is the arrow length on where they come back and set,
Right.
or their draw length. They don't have to worry about the let off. And those are good
So
starter bows for kids to start using
yeah,
before they transition up to another one.
the Genesis bow, they use that in the the National Archery in Schools program. All the kids use the exact same bow. The only difference is right-handed, left-handed, and then there's a couple different weight ranges. So they're
Yeah.
all using the same bow. There's no sights, no nothing on it. So the only difference between the archers is the archer. The equipment's the same. So you can't have somebody that doesn't have the money to go out and buy the $1,000 bow for their kid to shoot. Is still competing against everybody's the same. And those are nice. They fit everybody, but I like to say that type of bow fits nobody because it's not designed to fit you. You just fit the bow. You have to make it do whatever you want it to do. But that's a good starter bow just because of uh, the flexibility of it. And
Yes.
if you want to get started with your kids, as long as they can pull it back, they can shoot it, and the parents can shoot it as well. Because you could take a 10-year-old and shoot that bow, and I can shoot that bow. Well, not right now, but I got other things I'm healing up from. So yeah,
Yes. But it's like I said, parents want to know what bow to get that's not traditional. That's going to be it. And it's a great starter bow. You're not putting much money into it. It's easy to work with. The poundage is easy. The kids won't get discouraged with it. And because it's not like one, 30-pound back and they can't break it to where it breaks over. Here, 15, 20 pounds. It still penetrates the target. It's still on. Still good for schools. Everybody uses it. When they came out with them, it was unbelievable how many went with them. And I knew when I was working with 4-H, we had 3 right-handed and 1 left, and
yeah,
all the different colors. And the kids fought more over the colors that they wanted to use than the bows. The difference
right.
in the bow. Of course, there wasn't really any difference in the bows, but they would fight over who had the red one or the pink one or the blue one or the green one. So it was always that.
Yeah, I know. I help out with Nebraska's archery program once in a while, and we just had becoming a women outdoor event where ladies they was teaching them archery. There's other events going on too, but I think they're the green ones were the left-handed ones, just so that they could easily identify the left
Did the
ones
same
from
thing.
the
My
other
green one
ones.
was left-handed.
The green ones are left-handed, and all the other colors, the reds and the black and whatever other colors were the right-handers, and I think they did them by weight as well. So like a red would be, this weight range, and then another one was like the blue one maybe was a little bit lighter one or something. That way they can catch, okay, this is a bigger kid, okay, you get the red one, red right-handed one, or you get the green one because you're left-handed, and that way, it makes it easier for those running the program to grab a bow, but we had all adults, so we didn't have to worry about the lighter poundage bows.
Yeah.
Just
One
having
thing
enough
I would have
left-handed ones.
I know one thing we'd have to watch about that right here or this right here, especially if we're bow shooting and we pull
Right.
that back and that hair catches in that, we might rip off a little bit of it when it release a few times, but you'll learn the what gets in the way,
Yeah.
we'll have to get out of the way.
Well, when
That's
I was
why,
shooting too long of a draw length, they'd always catch my mustache. But now that I know what I'm supposed to be, it's going to miss
mhm.
it. Although I probably have to trim it up a little bit. It's getting a little bit bushy down there. But um, right now I'm not shooting anything right now. It's like April 11th, I had a triple bypass, and then I got to go back in the 25th because it didn't heal up. I don't lay around like most people did. So it didn't heal. So now they go back in and they're going to have to um, clamp it back together and tighten up some of the wires and put a couple plates in. And so now my healing starts all over again. I'm supposed to be off of that here come 3rd of July, but I'm going to start all over again, another 12 weeks. But so yeah, I can't even, I can lift the bow, but that's about it. But I won't be
Yeah, I
able
finally,
to, for a while. But
after my injuries, I had the shoulder dislocated, broken ribs. Pulling them back now is almost too hard. I hate that part. So I transitioned now to a crossbow. Yeah, some people say that's blasphemy, but that's what, if I want to hunt, that's what I have to do. But
well,
still, it's out there.
does it fit the category archery is a stick with a string fleeing another stick?
Yeah, that's it.
That's archery.
It's still, it
It,
just might be sideways, but it's there.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Whatever it takes to get you in the field. Like some of the kids, crossbow is perfect for them because they can't pull a lot of weight. At least with a crossbow, you're only going to get one shot, so you got to make sure it counts. At least the compound, you can sometimes get a second shot, depending on what they do. With a crossbow, you're not getting a second shot because it's too much movement to get them cocked again. But you know, hey, it gets you in the field doing archery, go right ahead. I had my store, those that had crossbows, I tell them you might need to bring in a crossbow target because my backstop won't completely stop it, and you're going to bury those bolts in the target. But go right ahead. I didn't care. Now broadheads, I had a note. Yeah, I think it was like a $200 fine for shooting your broadhead into my backstop.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, you can shoot it for $200 every shot because that
We
because
have
that
to
tears them up.
watch it. And we're talking about groupings earlier.
Yeah,
Most targets have the center and then four corners. For the guys that were real proficient at it, some of them want to go ahead and do the William Tell arrow in an arrow. I've seen some of them even have three. Boy, yeah, that's getting it on there. But do I want to ruin three errors or two errors? I say once you get that grouping where you're starting to slice and cut your other arrow shaft or hit it and bend it, it's time to just put one in the middle and hit your four corners with your other arrows so that you don't ruin them
right.
and tear them up. I mean, competition, I've had people look and use the knock for their target on somebody else's arrow because they say, oh, he hit right there at the target. He's on it, but he's off just a little bit. So if I aim left of that, and my son was bad about using a black knock or a brown knock so that
Yeah,
he didn't care where he found it, but that way it blended in with the target and nobody could use his arrows to judge off of when he
right.
shot. It was on a 3D target and all. But this is funny watching how everybody does stuff. Like we said earlier, different things work different ways for different people and all.
Well, and if you look at it too, if you're shooting at an angle, if you're shooting straight, that's one thing. But if you're the 3D targets, a lot of them are up or down hills. If you shoot and you shoot at their knock, you're not shooting where you need to go because you're shooting at the back of the arrow, which isn't in a direct line with the front of the arrow. So if you're shooting at the knock, you're going to be shooting. If you hit that knock, you're going to be in a bad shot. you're not going to slide it in. So
Yeah.
I never worried about shooting at a knock.
Well, he was.
I shot at
Some
the
people
center
got to
target.
where they could judge to see. Well, that's up a little bit. I see that knock. I saw where his input hit because you're not on some most of the 3D shoot that we used to do. You wasn't allowed a rangefinder. You had to do it all. You couldn't use binoculars on it either. Others would use those on practice shoots. You could use little binos or little small scopes of some type to judge where you needed to shoot. And they have booklets with little cards on it that you can look at the 3D target and say, "Oh, that's a,"
Oh yeah,
and then see where you're. Okay, so if his knock is right here, I need to work down. I can base it off his knock and move to the left and by 1 inch and drop 1 inch. I should be right in that mark, that 10 mark or 12 mark, whatever they want to call it, and go from
yeah.
there.
I've got one somewhere, the little card that we always have, and it's like, oh, here's got the bear and the targets, all the different stuff. But now there's so many different animals out here. When I did it, there was no dinosaurs and all these other critters. It was basically, your bears, your pigs, your deer, your hogs, turkeys. That's basically what all the targets were. And so now they've got dinosaurs and all kinds of gators, and I've seen fish and all kinds of different stuff now. And I don't have the cards for them, but I don't shoot a lot of 3Ds, so I'm not worried about it anyway. And if I did, when I was going all the time anyway, it's just um, I go out with a friend of mine, and um, it's it's who got to give the crap and who got to take it on the way home.
Yes.
That's it. It's like we didn't care if we were last and next to last or first and second. We didn't care where it was at. We were just shooting against each other, having fun, and one to shoot first, and then the other one to shoot first, and it's like a shoot. And sometimes we'd talk about what how we judged yardage and what we did, and just there, I just went out and I wanted to beat him every time. He wanted to beat me every time. Sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't.
Well, I looked at it like this. You could beat me every time. My key was to beat myself. I had to
Right.
beat what I did last time. That was my goal. So, and that's what I want the youth to understand. Just cause Joe, Jeannie, whoever beats you every time, but you have improved every time, you have accomplished something. It doesn't
Right.
matter. Just keep your improvement going and worry about that. Don't worry about what they're doing on the left or the right of you. You just keep making sure you're improving every time you go out. And all. And yes, you will have a bad day. You may have 2 bad days. You could have a bad week of shooting. But then if you realize what you're doing and fix that bad day and you come back into it and realize, well, dang, I came in third place, but I still shot 90 something points. And the last time I shot 89 points, if however the points were read, but
Right.
you still improved. It doesn't matter. You still beat your old score. You improved. So that's the accomplishment there.
Well, and when I'd go out and do the 3D shoots, there was 40 targets, 400 points, and then 8 points a target was 320 points. So my goal was to be 320 or above every time I went out, because that meant I averaged a kill shot on every target. And that was my goal, was because I was doing it to develop better skills for hunting, judging yardages for hunting, and I shot targets just to develop my shooting skill. I really wasn't too fond of shooting target tournaments. I did a couple, but I just didn't really have any fun at them. Yeah, it just wasn't my thing. I'd go down and shoot because I shoot spots to make sure I can, if I pick a spot, I know I can hit it. I develop my archery skills, and then I'd use the 3Ds to develop my hunting skills, because that's what I was doing was, I wanted to be able to go out and hunt and judge yardage, and that helps judging yardage. And like I was talking about it, it's step off 20 yards, and then you get where you would judge, okay, this is 20 yards. You just kind of mentally try walking a distance off and saying, okay, that's 20 yards, that's 30 yards, 40 yards. And then you judge the yardage, the target, and make your shot. And then if you were wrong, then you'd readjust. Even if you have if you use rangefinders, you should never use a rangefinder until you've already made the shot
Yes,
in
because
a
you're not gonna
3D
be able to pick.
situation.
Yeah, you
Right.
can't pick it up even out there in the real world and say, "Oh, that deer's sitting at 30 feet right now or 30 yards right now." Okay, let's put it down. Oh, he's done took 5 steps, headed the other direction, and now he's facing completely away from you. Now I don't even have a shot, so you've done wasted your time.
Right.
Got to have know it ahead of time, uh, estimate it ahead of time, and go from there.
Well, now I know with my bow that I hunt with, um, if they're on the same level. Now, if they're way down a hill or something, it's off. But I can kind of use my pins as a rangefinder, like at a 3D, the indoor or outdoor 3D that's not on a bunch of hills. Of course, right here in Nebraska, you don't have a 3D that's normally pretty much level. We do have one out here north, just in North Omaha, that is fairly flat. So there's not a lot of hills there, but most of the other ones all have hills. But I can take, if I'm looking at a deer, and I can get all of my pins on that deer, I better be using my 20-yard shot and my 20-yard pin. Now, not the 20 and the 60 are at the spine and the belly. Now I know I'm might be using a little bit more, and if I can't get all of them on there, I better be using a little bit further pin, and so depending on how many pins I can get on a deer is where I need to go. So I can kind of use that as a little bit of a range finder. But as soon as you start getting in hills, that all goes away.
Yeah,
Like I was talking about the gator, we shot at, or that one deer that was 20-yard shot, but it looked like it's 50. If I'd used that, it said it's 50 yards. So, I don't really use that a lot. I judge the distance to it and then make my shot. And, if you have a rangefinder, and you're out practicing or whatever, or you're not, if you're some of them, if you go out and use a rangefinder, then you're in a different class where you're not going to get a trophy or nothing. Or some of them allow you to use rangefinders, but judge the yardage to it, make your shot, and if you make a good shot, you're done. If you don't make a good shot, okay, I was off. So I was off by 5 yards, use a rangefinder. Yep, sure, I was off by 7 yards or whatever it was, and use them to verify after you've already made the shot. Now, hunting, I want to do it the other way around. I want to range to all distances so I know what the range is. Because I'm not stalking like you are. If I'm sitting in a tree stand, I want to know the ranges to different places, and that way I can make my shot and don't have to worry about knowing which pin. Just got to remember to pick a
oh
pin.
yes,
I've done that before. Forgot to pick a pin. Missed.
yeah. Well, Roy, I'm gonna have to let you go here. I've got some other stuff I got to head out to do, and it's been an enjoy talking with you.
Yeah, it kind of goes quick on this sometimes, doesn't it?
Oh yes, it does. And so I appreciate it. I hope we got something out of this. Hope the youth did too. I know it's a lot of it's just talking a little bit of hunting, tracking, trailing, and all, but there's always a little bit of stuff in there for everybody to listen to and catch on to.
Well, and that's kind of, what I like doing is because I learn stuff each time because I had never thought about using toilet paper as a marker, until you mentioned it. It's like, oh, that is good because it'll degrade the first time it rains. It's gonna be gone.
Yes.
And no, it's not going to hurt anything. And who knows? Maybe the birds will pick it up, make a nest out of it before it even rains.
Well, the bad part is if you use it to mark, and all of a sudden Mother Nature takes its course with you, and you're going like, oh, oh no, I done used it all to mark my trail, following this deer, and now my gut's hitting me. Oh man, what am I going to do? So make
Well,
sure you have another.
that's why you have two, a brand new one that you use for Mother Nature, and you have other ones that are partially gone that you use for marking trails.
Yes.
Get the really cheap stuff you don't want to use. The
Yeah.
single ply.
That's it. That's it. It's good.
Yeah.
Well, it's been fun. I enjoyed being on with you.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and for those that have made it this far, thanks for watching or listening. Depends on if you're listening on Audible. You can get this on Audible, or you can get on Spotify to get the audio part of the podcast and the video. You can watch the video on my YouTube channel, learn to fix it yourself. There's all kinds of stuff out there, not just archery stuff, as well as if you go into Archery Talk 101 Facebook group, the video will be there as well as other instructors and other archers to ask questions and go from there. So if you have any questions, get a hold of myself or Brad or anybody, and be glad to help you. So once again, thanks for watching and listening. My name is Roy Canterbury, and I've been your host today on Archery Talk 101. And Brad's been a real nice guest and been fun talking with you. And I'm sure we'll talk later.
All right. Take care, Roy. Y'all be
All
safe
right.
out there, guys, gals.
All right. All right. Talk to you later. Bye.
Okay.